So they can either hold it in a separate account or a separate trust account for that beneficiary, or transfer the capital that belongs to that beneficiary to any custodian or parent, and then they can either set up a trust or do what they will with the property. But once that's done, all duties of the trustee are discharged, meaning that the trustee is no longer responsible for that beneficiary. When beneficiary is a dependent adult at the time of final distribution, the acting or successor trustee shall, at their sole discretion, continue to act as trustees by holding adult beneficiary share in a separate trust under same conditions outlined in this trust. Acting trustees shall invest and use accrual of such property for the use of support for the adult dependent beneficiary as deemed necessary by trustees. Now, an adult dependent beneficiary is someone who may have reached the age of majority, but because of some incapacitation, be it physical or mental, they're not eligible to receive and competently handle the beneficial distribution. So the acting trustee shall invest and use accrual of such property for the use and support for adult dependent beneficiary as deemed necessary by the trustees, or pay or transfer all capital of that adult dependent beneficiary to any custodian or parent of that beneficiary pursuant to the provisions within this trust, whereupon all duties of the trustee shall be discharged of duty to that beneficiary. Should any named beneficiary pass within 30 days of grantor passing, and do not leave heir or issue that live 30 days after the grantor passes, then the share or gift left for that beneficiary shall be divided among the remaining surviving beneficiaries. If those surviving beneficiaries are not of age of majority, acting trustee may transfer all shares attributable to those minors to any parent or custodian subject to the same terms and conditions contained in this trust, whereupon the trustee shall be discharged of duties to that beneficiary. So this is basically saying that the distribution that goes to beneficiaries, should they not survive, and should not they have any children that survive 30 days after the grantor dies, then the share that's left for those beneficiaries, or that beneficiary that dies, shall be divided among the surviving beneficiaries. All right? And if those surviving beneficiaries who receive that share are not of the age of majority, then the acting trustee can pass that beneficial distribution to their custodians or their parents. If any residual beneficiaries do not live past the grantor by at least 30 days and do not leave heir or issue, their share designated for that beneficiary will revert to the residue of this trust. Now, residual beneficiaries are not necessarily listed beneficiaries. They may be the heir or issue of listed beneficiaries. So listed beneficiaries are the beneficiaries named in this trust. But their children, although not listed, are residual beneficiaries. All right? And if there should be any share that's designated for them in the event that their parents, who are listed beneficiaries, should pass, and they cannot receive the distribution, then the distribution or that share will go back into the trust. If all successor beneficiaries do not survive grantor by at least 30 days and leave no heir or issue who survive the grantor by 30 days, all remaining property in this trust shall revert to this estate of the grantor. Now, this provision seems to be saying the same thing, but it's different because it's saying all successor beneficiaries. So these are necessarily beneficiaries who are listed, okay? And if they cannot receive the beneficial interest or the beneficial distribution, and they have no children who can receive the beneficial distribution, then that property reverts back into the trust as well. If any beneficiary receives real property, that means a mortgage property, a home, a building, subject to a mortgage at final distribution, that beneficiary shall take such property subject to the mortgage, and that beneficiary shall not be entitled to have mortgage resolved or paid off from the remaining assets or residual of this trust. So this is basically saying any beneficiary who receives a distribution that has a mortgage, they're responsible for that mortgage, and that mortgage will not be paid off from the assets that remain in the trust. If any properties distributed to beneficiaries from this trust are subject to any liens or encumbrances, the beneficiary shall take the property subject to those liens and encumbrances and shall not be entitled to have them resolved from the remaining assets or residue of this trust. So if any of the beneficiaries receive property that has a claim on it from a creditor, for example, if they receive a car and that car has yet to be paid off and there's a finance company that's still owed a certain amount of money from that car, that beneficiary is responsible for paying that finance company. And the trust is saying that it will not pay any of that, what is owed to that creditor from the residue of this trust. Final distribution to beneficiaries shall be per stirpes. Now this is just a fancy way of saying if you have 3 heirs, the beneficial split is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, okay, for each heir, for 3 heirs. Now if one dies and they have 2 children, then that beneficiary's 1/3 split is split among those 2 children. So the distribution is now 1/3 for the first beneficiary, 1/3 for the second beneficiary, and then 1/6 to each child of the third beneficiary. 1/6 and 1/6 equals 1/3. That would be the 1/3 for the beneficiary that died.